What's on Matt's mind?
Let's dive into that wonderful world of Matt's mind. What's going on, Matt?
What is going on? 4 letters, CISA. Have you heard of it?
Nope.
Every week I ask that whenever I say something. I'm always hoping one week someone will say, oh yeah, I know all about that. The Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, or CISA, was just signed into law. And there's a few things about it. Well, I guess I'll start off by explaining what it is.
That would be
Basically,
great.
The CISA, or CISA, I guess is how you could say it.
Whatever.
It's basically an Information Security Act that was folded into the last Spending and Budget Act, which was just signed into law a few days ago by President Obama.
Who is now vacationing in Hawaii, huh?
Yeah, for 2 weeks.
All right, sorry. Back to your mind.
And basically what it does is it provides legal immunity to corporations in America when they want to share private data whenever they get hacked or whenever there's a digital breach. It gives them immunity for sending that data to Homeland Security. And it basically, some people are equating it to the new Patriot Act, which I think is a bit extreme because it's not that widespread. But it is basically an act that says that a company can send all your personal information to the government and there's no recourse and there's nothing preventing them from doing that. The part about the whole thing that kind of is irking people is the fact that it was literally just folded into the budget deal. It was on page 1,728 of the 2,000-page bill, and it was just folded in. It's not related at all to the budget, but they knew that if they put it in there, they could get it passed.
Isn't that how every law is passed, though, here in the United States? Just rolled into something else?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of ridiculous because even to the point where the president isn't able to do a line-by-line veto because that was ruled unconstitutional. So either he has to accept the whole thing and let this pass or reject the whole thing, and then the government shuts down. So this is kind of a twofold argument. One is that you can do that, and two is that this thing was passed and really no one's talking about it.
But Matt's talking about it.
I am talking about it.
So, I mean, how do you think it should have been passed separately, and the president should have vetoed it, or what do you think about it?
Well, I'm not sure that President Obama necessarily would have ever vetoed this because this seemed like something that he stood behind and something he liked, but that doesn't make it right. I guess since I understand it, and with the 30 seconds of knowledge I just gave you, how do you feel about now a private corporation, say
like who?
Like
Facebook? Google.
Sure, Facebook. Whoever.
I give Google more information than Facebook, but go ahead. Facebook. Let's use Facebook.
Okay, we'll say Facebook. Facebook has a digital tack on them. And in an effort to have Homeland Security help them, they just send all of your personal information, all of their users' personal information to the government. Now the government has this data, and there's really no provisions on what the government can then do with that data.
What does Facebook get out of it?
They get help.
Oh, from the digital tack or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're asking, how do I feel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Because up until now, they couldn't do that. The government would still help them, but they weren't just legally allowed to send buckets of data onward.
Are these private companies, would they do that, though?
Yeah.
They do.
A lot of them are behind it.
That's weird. I feel like forever they've been fighting against trying to give the government data, and at least to the public. And I feel like there was an uproar of that. And I thought the tech companies were like, "This is my data. You can't come and get it." The big NSA backdoor thing kind of comes to mind when you talk about this kind of stuff. And I feel like tech companies were really against giving up their data, but now they're for it. If they're
not necessarily for it, and I wouldn't necessarily say that this is something that they're 100% behind, but I think that this has more of the feeling of if they want the help, they can send it. But whereas the Patriot Act was more of, we don't care what you think. We're just going to budge our way in, and you have to let us do
Right.
this. So I think this is more of a two-way street.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my eyes, I would see it as the U.S. government gets my data, right? But in theory, it stays in the U.S. And I know the hands who get my data, and for the most part, are semi-trustworthy and wouldn't do something terrible with my data, theoretically, right? If you trust the government, in theory, that's kind of how you would feel. And so, if it was between giving my data to the U.S. government to do whatever they want, but I know that my chances are my information, my bank information, or whatever I give to Facebook wouldn't be given out past that, then I'd be okay with it, versus giving it to some cyber terrorist guy who hacked into their servers and took that data. And so if it takes a big company like Facebook to say, you know what, we need help, and here's what I'm going to offer you for that help to make sure that data stays here in the U.S. and safe, then I'm all for it. If that's how this works. Is that not how, am I wrong, totally off base on how this would work?
I mean, I think in general it is.
I think for you just don't want to see your data go anywhere that it shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that there's a need to send data in order to help someone
Right.
recover from a data hack. It seems kind of like a tit for tat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
This,
Maybe
I mean, this bill doesn't bother me, or this whatever rule bill doesn't bother me too much, just because of what I just said. As long as I know the U.S. government is helping to, mend that breach and make sure, and they pass my data on, as long as they're getting some help, is my my thing.
Yeah, and I will say that I think there's a lot of people on the internet who are flipping out about this. I think that there are bigger problems.
Isn't
with
that what the
government.
internet is for?
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think this is as huge of a problem as
No.
people are saying. I think it's just more of it kind of sucks that this was never really discussed and
Right.
the way they passed
But
it.
but I think the bigger problem is all of tech isn't really talked about in that sense. I mean, this show we talk about, the cool stuff, the gadgets, but it's so complicated to talk about the other things, the data security and all of that stuff, right? It's just not
Yeah.
talked about because it's so hard to grasp your head around. And then for Congress to even try and grasp is just impossible because we all know Congress can't do crap. And so, I don't know. That's the bigger question. And, there's bigger tech issues that should be discussed, like net neutrality and things like that. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that should be an upcoming show because I think we can definitely talk about that.
And that's another Matt's Mind.
On Matt's Mind.
Well, thanks, Matt, for bringing that up.